joined now by General David Thompson, Vice Chief of Space Operations for the United States Space Force. As Vice Chief, he's responsible for assisting the Chief of Space Operations in organizing, training, and equipping space forces in the United States and overseas by integrating space policy and guidance and coordinating space-related activities for the Space Force and the Department of the Air Force. General Thompson, thank you for joining Space Foundation and our State of Space 2021 program today.
Rich, it's a pleasure to be here with you.
General, from your perspective and experience as Vice Chief for Space Force and as a national security leader, what is the state of space in 2021?
Well, for years we've been using the tagline that space is congested, contested, and competitive. And I would say that probably more so than any time in the past, that tagline absolutely applies here. You know, if you think about the congested part of space, in 2020 alone, there were over 110 space launches, nearly 1,000 new space objects, satellites deployed into the space domain. We're now talking about rapidly approaching 3,000 active satellites in orbit. And if you look at plans of companies and nations, we're very quickly going to go over probably into the tens of thousands of satellites in the near future. And so all that is good in terms of economic activity. It's great in terms of the potential benefits that it would provide to nations and individuals and economic activity, but it also presents a challenge in terms of managing that activity, managing it physically in terms of the fear of collision, managing the services and the spectrum and the rights. And so it's becoming increasingly congested even more so in the past. The second thing is it's certainly become more competitive, right? All that activity from an economic standpoint is again good, but the challenges that it provides in terms of competition among companies, but also increasingly the services available to potential adversaries or those who might wish to do us harm also presents an issue for us in terms of the competition in the domain. And then, of course, the greatest concern for us on the national security side is the contested aspect of the domain. Just this last year, Russia tested a new offensive space capability in orbit. They launched it into an orbit that was threatening to one of our space systems. They've conducted a weapons test. Others are building space capabilities, offensive weapons. China continues on that path. So in 2020, we are absolutely still in an area of congested, contested, and competitive. And that is only going to increase in the future and will require additional focus and attention for all of us.
Sir, if I may, I want to pull on that thread of congested and competitive that you've offered there. What roles do you see civil space agencies and commercial industry members playing in support of the national security and space mission that the Space Force has?
So partnerships are increasingly important, not just to the success of the Space Force itself, but for the nation, for our economic viability, for our effective exploitation for commercial purposes and exploratory purposes. On the civil side, we have had and enjoyed tremendous partnerships for years, going back decades with NASA in terms of the services capabilities we need, launch and data relay. We've done a lot of technology work, as well as policy and other work with NASA. That partnership has to increase with the increasing congestion and competition in the domain. We have a growing partnership with the Department of Commerce, not only in terms of their ability to accept the space traffic management mission. That's a regulatory mission that we're not suited or really chartered to perform. And so we that partnership, both in terms of that regulatory activity, but also helping them to spur on economic activity to the benefit of of the nation from a prosperity perspective is important. And then our longstanding relationship with the FAA to facilitate commercial launch. On the commercial side, where civil is a long enduring partnership that we need to grow, really we need to develop some new partnerships with the commercial market, especially new space where innovation and money is flowing in to develop new capabilities, to use space in new and different ways, to develop new concepts of operations. Just like I think the commercial market did with smartphone technology a decade or more ago, we in the DoD need to recognize that innovation, that energy, understand where they're going, understand where we can ride on the coattails of commercial, so to speak, to take advantage of the services and capabilities they're going to provide, but also understand how we can adapt some of that commercial investment in technology and ideas to national security purposes. And then the last part of the partnership, certainly civil and commercial will be very important, but we can't forget about our allied and partner nations. We're growing partnerships there. Of course, our long-standing partnership with the Five Eyes partners, growing with Japan and with France and Germany are important, but we're really expanding partnerships into new areas and with new nations. Our first bilateral engagement as a U.S. Space Force occurred with the country of Brazil, and late last year we finished a South American Space Security Conference. And so we have found that those nations are interested in partnering with us as a nation, with us as a Space Force, and our common interest really is the stability and the security of the domain so that it's available for economic purposes, for exploratory and research purposes, and for security of the nations.
So you've got a year under your belt with the Space Force and operations. I'm curious if you can share with us, what are the areas of focus and priorities for this new year?
Absolutely, Rich. So year one was very much about inventing the Space Force, right? Creating a brand new military service. We had some great raw materials in Air Force Space Command and parts of 23 other organizations inside of the U.S. Air Force that helped us to create and invent the force. The focus for year two is really going to be on integration. We need to ensure we're tied in very effectively with the rest of the Department of Defense. First and foremost, we need to tie in with the other services and with the combatant commands. Our job is to provide capabilities for soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines. It's to provide ISR and indications and warning and communications, not just for them, but for our national leaders. We provide those vital capabilities like GPS, not just for military forces, but for public safety and commercial purposes. All of that, we have to ensure we integrate effectively back into the force. Even though we've created a separate service, provide those capabilities tightly, not only to the services, but also into the combatant commands. And certainly our largest partnership and need to integrate is with U.S. Space Command, the newest of the combatant commands, but the rest of the combatant commands, European Command, Indo-Pacific Command, as I talked about, Southern Command and all the others, have needs, unique needs for space capabilities, different ways they use the services we provide. So we need to integrate with all of them and ensure first and foremost, we're providing those capabilities to them effectively, and where they have to help us protect those capabilities in the face of threats. So it's really that integration challenge, designing our forces, integrating our forces, preparing our forces, and making sure they operate effectively inside the combatant commands with the rest of the joint force is going to be the focus of General Raymond's priorities for the second year of the Space Force.
The integration challenge anywhere is always a difficult one, but I'm curious, if you have to forecast, what do you think will be Space Force's biggest achievement in 2021?
Wow, that's an interesting question. Let me say first and foremost, our biggest achievement or our biggest success has to be the continued provision of those capabilities that we provide today. You know, in spite of the fact that we created a brand new service here in 2020, while we did that, we had to continue to provide those, operate those space systems and capabilities as a new service that we had in the past. Providing GPS, as we discussed, providing missile warning, providing global communications, maintaining domain awareness, all those things that we do. If in fact we failed in any of those areas and achieved greatly in any other area, we would be a failure. So I'll say first and foremost, our number one achievement absolutely has to be to continue to operate those systems, provide those capabilities that we do every single day. Having said that, I think probably I'm going to say the greatest achievement I think we will have in 2021 is actually to complete the work of really establishing this brand new service. Those who know the Space Force Act, the 2020 NDAA that created the Space Force, also know that Congress gave us 18 months to complete this work. 18 months to complete the design of the entire force, to transfer in the capabilities and the functions and the missions, to transfer in people, to ensure it's effectively resourced. I think when we look back on 2021, by the 18-month point, we will have completed the design of the service. We stood up Space Operations Command last year. We're in the final stages of the design of Space Systems Command and Training and Readiness Command. We've established the parameters for two vital centers, a National Space Intelligence Center and a Warfighting and Analysis Center that are critical to addressing threats in the domain. All of that work will be done by the 18-month point. And looking back and having done that in the midst of what happened last year with COVID, in the midst of continuing to operate every single day, I think that's going to be our greatest achievement. When you look back to 1947 and what the U.S. Air Force did and how long it took to establish itself, basically about a 3-year process, the U.S. Air Force was almost turnkey ready on day one. The U.S. Space Force was not. To be able to have really created this service in 18 months, I think, will be the achievement that will be remembered for decades to come.
That's really impressive. And you and General Raymond and all the Guardians there are to be commended for what you guys are doing in the truncated time that Congress and others have given to you. General, thank you for your time. Thank you for your insights. We're really grateful for the service that you and all the Guardians offer at Space Force and for doing what you can to make this country and others safe. And we look forward to future conversations with you and, of course, seeing you at Symposium in August of this year. Thank you, General.
You're welcome. On behalf of General Raymond and all of the Guardians, it remains a privilege to serve. And thanks to you and the Space Foundation for the vital role that you play in the security of the nation and the effective use of the domain.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day.